Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving deep into the EU's AI Act.
Yeah.
Specifically, all those requirements companies have to know.
Right.
And how exactly the Act defines those, key terms.
Okay.
We've got, a bunch of expert analyses, and we've even got official documents.
Yeah.
We're going to break it all down so you walk away knowing everything about the AI Act.
It's a lot out there, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be overwhelming trying to get your head around it.
Yeah.
We're going to try to focus on the core concepts so you, get it.
Yeah, let's kick things off with the main purpose of the AI Act. What's this whole thing about? What's it trying to do?
Well, if you go right to the source, the regulation, the aim of the AI Act, it's to promote trustworthy AI.
Yeah.
But also safeguard against, any potential harm.
Right.
It's all about finding that balance between, innovation and responsibility.
Okay.
Those two things we're trying to hold in tension.
Gotcha. And it looks like this whole thing is a rolling implementation, right?
Yeah.
First set of prohibitions are going into effect February 2025.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming up fast.
It is.
Companies need to be getting ready now.
Right now.
One key thing is understanding that the Act uses a risk-based approach.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that there's different rules depending on how risky an AI system is.
Okay, so that brings us to a really important question.
Yeah.
How in the world does this Act define an AI system? That's got to be the foundation of everything else.
For sure, you're right. It provides a pretty detailed definition, which is good. It essentially says that an AI system is a machine-based system that's designed to operate with some degree of autonomy.
Okay.
But what I think is really interesting is how much emphasis they put on adaptability.
Okay.
Meaning the system can, learn
Gotcha.
and change after it's already out there in the world.
Okay.
Using input to generate things like predictions or content, maybe even decisions that impact the real world.
So it's not just a static piece of software. It's something that can evolve.
That's right. It's looking beyond just basic software to get to the real dynamic nature of AI.
Right.
And this definition is really similar to how the OECD defines AI. So that kind of puts it in a global context as well.
So why is it so crucial to get this definition right?
Well, because this definition is literally what decides which systems are under the AI Act's regulations.
Oh, wow.
So it's all about being super clear,
Gotcha.
Can you imagine how messy it would be if we were trying to regulate something that we couldn't even clearly define?
Right.
It'd be chaos.
That makes a lot of sense. So now we know what an AI system is according to the AI Act. Who needs to actually follow all these rules, though?
Within the EU, it applies to anyone providing or deploying AI systems,
Okay.
regardless of where that AI was actually made.
So if I'm a company here in Europe and using an AI tool developed somewhere else, I still got to make sure it meets all the AI Act standards.
You do, and this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The AI Act can also apply to companies outside of the EU.
Seriously? How is that possible?
If the output from your AI system is used in the EU, you might have to comply, even if your company's somewhere else entirely.
So let's say I'm a company in the US and a company in France is using my AI-powered marketing tool. I'm subject to the EU's AI Act,
That's right.
even though I'm not in the EU.
Yeah, the Act has what they call extraterritorial reach.
Okay.
It cares about where the AI is being used, not just where it came from.
Wow, that's a big deal for companies all over the world then. I mean, the AI Act's influence is way beyond the EU's borders.
Right, it really sets a precedent for AI regulation globally.
Okay, so we've covered, the definition of an AI system and who has to follow the rules. Let's talk about the rules themselves. The Act seems really focused on something called high-risk AI systems. What makes an AI system high risk?
So there's two main categories, right? The first category is AI systems that are safety components. Think of AI in cars or medical devices, products that already have EU health and safety regulations.
Okay, so if AI is part of something that could impact someone's safety, it's automatically high risk.
Basically.
Makes sense. What's the second category?
This one focuses on AI systems that are used in specific sectors, the kind that could really impact people's fundamental rights or their safety.
Yeah.
We're talking areas like education, employment, justice, migration, law enforcement.
Wow, those are some serious areas. Yeah, I can see why they would be high risk. Can you give some concrete examples of what kinds of systems would fall under that category?
Sure, the Act's Annex 3 has a detailed list, but to give you a few examples, we're talking things like biometric identification systems,
Okay.
tools used for credit scoring,
Gotcha.
and even systems that dispatch emergency services.
Wow, those are some powerful examples. And if those systems aren't developed and used responsibly, the consequences could be huge.
Absolutely. That's why the Act really, focuses on safeguards and oversight, particularly for these high-risk systems.
So let's say I'm a company that is developing one of these high-risk systems. What are the specific things they have to do under the AI Act?
There's a bunch of requirements,
Yeah.
but it really comes down to making sure that these high-risk AI systems are developed and used responsibly.
Nope.
So, one example. You got to have a really solid risk management system,
Okay.
but maybe even more important, you got to make sure the data you're using to train your AI is high quality.
Okay, what does high quality mean in this context?
Well, the Act specifically says that the data used for training, it needs to be relevant, representative, free from errors as much as possible, and complete.
Okay.
This is really about trying to address bias in AI systems, making sure the data is appropriate and doesn't lead to discriminatory outcomes.
So it's not just about having tons of data, it's about having the right data.
Exactly. Data quality is everything when it comes to responsible AI.
Yeah, especially for systems that have such a big impact on people's lives.
Totally.
What about human oversight? Seems like that's got to be pretty crucial when we're talking about responsible AI.
Absolutely. Human oversight is a must for high-risk systems, according to the AI Act.
What?
One very specific example is that you have to have a stop button.
A stop button, really?
Yeah, or something similar, basically a way for humans to step in and shut down the system if things go wrong.
Okay, that's reassuring. Sounds like the EU is really trying to keep humans in the loop,
Yeah,
making sure we don't just hand over control to these AI systems.
right. The whole focus on human oversight is key to the AI Act's approach to mitigating risk and ensuring responsible development.
Makes sense.
But that's a big topic.
Yeah.
We should probably spend some more time unpacking it.
Okay.
So let's dive deeper into the specifics in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. I think we've covered a lot already, and I need a minute to process all this.
Me too. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
We'll pick up right where we left off when we return.
Perfect. See you soon.
Welcome back. We left off talking about human oversight for these high-risk AI systems.
Right. I think a lot of people are probably wondering about that. How does the AI Act actually, approach this?
Well, it doesn't say you have to do it this way or that way,
Okay.
but it's very clear that humans have got to be in control.
Gotcha.
So that could mean, defining the role of human operators,
Yeah.
setting up clear lines of responsibility, and making sure those operators have the training and tools to actually understand the AI system and manage it effectively.
So it's not just about having that stop button. It's about designing the whole system. So human oversight is built in from the beginning.
Exactly, yeah. And that oversight, it needs to be there throughout the entire life cycle of the AI.
Okay.
From the initial design and development phase all
Yeah.
the way to, deployment, monitoring, even decommissioning.
Wow.
Humans got to be actively involved at every stage,
Oh, yeah.
making sure the system's working safely and ethically.
So it's like building checks and balances into the system itself.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Another big requirement for these high-risk AI systems is transparency.
Okay. Transparency. What does that actually look like?
Basically, people need to be able to understand how the AI system works and how it's being used.
Okay.
That means, clear documentation,
Yeah.
making sure information about the system's capabilities and limitations is easy to find,
Gotcha.
and being open about the data used to train the system.
I can definitely see why transparency is important, especially for these systems that can have such a big impact on people's lives. It's
Right.
about trust, right?
Absolutely. Transparency builds trust in these AI systems. It lets people scrutinize them, give feedback, push for improvement.
Okay. Now, speaking of transparency, I think we should talk about deepfakes.
Mm.
The AI Act actually talks about this specifically, right?
It does. The Act recognizes the potential risks that come with AI-generated content, especially deepfakes. So it requires that any content that's artificially created or manipulated, like a deepfake video, it's got to be disclosed.
So if I'm, let's say, using AI to create a deepfake, I got to be upfront about it.
Exactly. The idea is to stop the spread of misinformation and protect people from being tricked by AI.
Makes sense.
But the Act also recognizes that there are legit uses for this kind of content,
Okay.
like in creative stuff, satire, fiction.
Right, but doesn't that create kind of a gray area?
Mhm.
How do you, decide what's a legitimate use and what's potentially harmful?
That's a good question, and it's one of the big debates around the AI Act.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between transparency and, creative freedom.
Right.
The Act tries to do this by being more flexible with the disclosure requirements for stuff that's clearly meant for entertainment or art.
So the context and intent behind the AI
Yeah.
generated content, those things matter.
They really do. Developers and people using these systems, they need to think carefully about that.
Earlier, you mentioned general purpose AI models. I think it's time to dive into those a bit.
Right.
What are they and why are they important in this whole AI Act thing?
General purpose AI models, they're like models designed to be adaptable.
Okay,
They can be used for lots of different tasks.
gotcha.
They're super powerful, and a lot of different AI systems are built on them.
Okay.
Think of them as the foundation.
So they're not designed for just one specific purpose. They can be trained to do a bunch of things.
Exactly. And that versatility, that's what makes them so important.
Yeah.
The AI Act knows that these models are only going to become more important in the future.
Yeah.
And even though they might not be high risk by themselves, the Act still has requirements for whoever provides them.
So even if the model itself isn't risky, the people making it still have responsibilities.
That's the idea. It's about putting safeguards in place from the very beginning.
Okay.
The Act recognizes that these models could be used for so many things.
Yeah.
And in ways we might not even be able to predict.
Right, right.
So it's all about responsible development from the start.
What kind of requirements are we talking about here? What does the Act want from the providers of these models?
One big thing is that these models, they got to be developed in a way that mitigates risks to health, safety, and fundamental rights.
Okay.
It's not just about making sure the model works, it's about anticipating potential harm and stopping it before it happens. You got to design with ethics in mind from day one.
Gotcha.
The Act is trying to make responsible AI principles part of these technologies.
Right.
Another important thing is documentation.
Yeah.
Providers got to give clear and detailed information about what their models can and can't do.
So basically, be transparent about the model's strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. That way users can make good decisions about how to use it responsibly.
So I'm starting to understand why these models are so important. But how do you figure out if they're high risk? It seems like it depends on how they're being used, right?
That's a really good point. And that's one of the hardest things about regulating AI,
Yeah.
honestly. These models are adaptable. They can be used in ways that the people who made them didn't even think of.
Right.
So to deal with that, the AI Act came up with this concept of systemic risk.
Systemic risk. Okay. That sounds kind of serious.
It is. It basically means that a model, because of how powerful it is and how many people it could reach, could be a risk to the EU's economy or society as a whole.
Wow.
Even if it doesn't seem that risky when you look at how it's being used individually.
So it's not just what the model can do, it's the impact it could have on a bigger scale.
Right, exactly. Imagine a model being used in critical infrastructure across the EU.
Okay.
If that model has a flaw or is vulnerable, the consequences could be huge.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, I'm starting to understand why they're worried about this systemic risk.
Hmm.
But how can you even tell if a model has that kind of potential?
It's tough. The AI Act looks at a lot of different things.
Okay.
Like the model's capabilities, how much power was used to train it, how many users it could potentially reach, and what kind of data it uses.
So if a model is super powerful, used by tons of people, and has access to sensitive data, that's a bad sign.
Yeah, those are definitely red flags. And the Act has some safeguards built in.
Okay.
If a model hits certain limits, like if it uses a crazy amount of computing power, it's automatically assumed to be a systemic risk model.
Okay, so they've got ways to identify these potentially risky models. What happens if a model is identified as having that systemic risk?
But then there are even stricter requirements that kick in.
Okay.
The people making the model, they have to deal with a lot more scrutiny.
So it's like a tiered system. The more powerful the model, the more responsibility falls on the people who made it.
Exactly. The AI Act is designed to be proportionate.
Okay.
The level of regulation matches the level of risk.
This is all really interesting, but man, it's a lot to think about. I need a minute to digest all this.
I hear you. It's a lot. Let's take a quick pause. We'll come back for the last part of our deep dive into the AI Act.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we're back and ready for the last part of our deep dive into the EU's AI Act. We've talked about a lot, defining AI systems, understanding those high-risk categories, and even that idea of systemic risk.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground. And we talked about some of the key requirements that companies need to be aware of, especially those that are developing and deploying these really powerful AI systems.
Right. Yeah,
But there's one more crucial aspect we need to touch on.
okay, I'm all ears, especially since we've been talking about how this act could affect companies all over the world, not just in the EU.
Exactly. So let's shift gears a bit
Ye-
and talk about what this all means for you, the listener.
Okay, yeah, what's the takeaway here? Why should people care about the EU's AI Act, even if they're not based in Europe?
Well, the AI Act is really setting a precedent for AI regulation globally. It's
Yeah.
pushing the conversation forward on how we develop and use AI responsibly.
Okay.
So whether you're a developer, a business leader, or just someone who uses AI every day, the AI Act has implications for you.
Can you give us some examples of how that might actually play out?
Sure, for developers, it means being more aware of the ethical implications of their work, thinking about how their AI systems could impact individuals and society as a whole. It's about bringing those considerations into the design process right from the start.
So it's not just about building AI that works, it's about building AI that's ethical.
Exactly. And for business leaders, it's about understanding the regulatory landscape and making sure that your company's AI systems are compliant, even if you're not based in the EU. Remember, the Act can reach beyond the EU's borders.
Right, right. What about for the average person, though? Someone who maybe isn't developing AI, but uses it every day.
For them, it's about becoming more aware of how AI is being used in the products and services they use. It's about understanding the potential benefits and risks of AI and having informed conversations about how we want AI to shape our world.
So it's a call to action for all of us, in a way, to be more informed and engaged citizens in this age of AI.
I think that's a great way to put it. The AI Act is a sign that we need to be having these conversations. We need to think critically about the future of AI and how we're going to shape it.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. I feel like I understand the AI Act a lot better now, but I also realize there's so much more to learn.
That's the thing, isn't it? AI is constantly evolving, and so is our understanding of what it means for us. The AI Act is a step in the right direction, but it's just the beginning of a much bigger conversation.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you think our listeners should know?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed. The AI Act is complex, and it's still changing. There are a lot of resources online, like the AI Act Explorer website. Those can help you keep up with the latest developments.
That's a good point. I would also add that it's important to explore different perspectives on the AI Act. There are a lot of different opinions out there about how to regulate AI. Engaging with those different viewpoints can help you form your own informed opinions.
I agree. Critical thinking is essential in today's world. Don't just take our word for it. Do your own research, ask questions, challenge assumptions.
Well said. So there you have it, everyone. A deep dive into the EU's AI Act. It's a lot to process, but hopefully you're leaving feeling more informed, more curious, and maybe even a little bit inspired.
The future of AI is being shaped right now, and the choices we make today will have a huge impact. It's up to all of us to make sure that AI is a force for good in the world.
That's a powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time.